Hello. I'm giving everything a second to make sure it connects correctly. Okay, I can see in the Facebook group that we are all set up. So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Some of you, it might even be evening. Thank you for being here today. If you're here live, thank you for catching the recording. I have been getting a lot of questions about traveling for therapy intensives, and I wanted to come on here and share some information, some things I'm thinking about and doing in my practice, as well as some things that I'm coaching other therapists to consider. So I'm going to take some notes in the chat. I'm also going to keep the chat open because sometimes I don't get the notifications for whatever reason. So obviously if you are here live and you're wanting to ask questions, I want to be able to see those come up. So I've got that on my phone now, so we should be good to go. But when it comes to therapy intensives, so again, as I've talked about before, these can look in so many different ways. An extended session can even be 90 minutes, it can be 2 hours. For some people are doing these 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, even 5 day in a row packages. So a lot of this information is probably going to apply to those of you who are considering more of this like package model. Because once we start to think about multiple hours and multiple days, that's where we start to have a little bit more flexibility with intensives in terms of, if someone lives across the state from you or right over the state border, depending on where you are on the state border. I've known some therapy clients to travel 30 minutes over a state border to work with a therapist from where they live. Obviously, this is a legal thing. This is your duty to ultimately check in with your board, your laws and regulations around where are you allowed to work with clients. Now, for the most part, as far as I've heard, I know there are some states that have some unique sprinkles of information legally, but as far as I'm aware, you obviously can work with clients in the state you are licensed in, right? So I'm licensed in Washington and Oregon, so I can work with clients whether they're in Washington or Oregon. But I know there are some states that say, and you also have to be in that state. So you can't travel somewhere else and then see the client. I know obviously a lot of this is in flux as SciPact is, ever growing. This counseling compact hopefully passes so that everyone can see clients, support their clients where they need to be supported. So obviously this is ever changing, but for sure, make sure that you are looking at your laws and your regulations around where can I work with clients? Because ultimately at the end of the day, as long as you're doing therapy and not like a therapeutic retreat that is billed under like a coaching business or something, that's obviously very different. But for the most part, you're probably still going to be limited to where you are authorized to work, depending on your laws, your regulations, your state board, all of that. But that said, right, there are some clients who might be willing to travel to you, whether that is right across the state border, whether that is, I recently, literally just in the past week, and this is where I've had more questions come up about this, I've had 2 couples, and this is actually the 3rd time this has happened. So I'd say the past 2 months, 3 times this has happened, twice in the past week. I've had people say, so long as I travel to you, can I work with you during for one of these intensives? And yes, if they come to me, absolutely, we can, do that work together. I'm not maybe always licensed in the states that people are licensed in. Like it was Michigan and Illinois that reached out to me last week, which is interesting. So I'm from the Midwest, but I don't have connections there. I don't do any networking there because my license is over here. So the power of search engine optimization. Now, when it comes to the different things that you want to consider, because I do have an office space here in Seattle where I'm located, where I can do these intensives on the weekends. I do also have a colleague in Portland, Oregon, where I can sublet an office as needed. So I have office spaces that I can use. Something that a lot of therapists consider if you are primarily virtual and you do not have an office space. So then I get a lot of therapists that say, so can I not do this? Can I not do intensives where people are traveling to me, or I'm doing some amount of traveling, whatever that is? And again, you have flexibility here, right? Just because you don't have an office permanently or available to sublet kind of like as needed, doesn't mean you still can't do this, because basic rule, right? Client has to be in the state that you are licensed in to work with you. So that can mean a client comes and stays at a hotel or an Airbnb or, depending on where you live, maybe like a resort center or something like that. They can ultimately kind of treat it like a retreat. And I've had some people say that of like, oh, we're thinking of kind of treating this as a retreat. The clients have said that. So they can make that whole experience whatever they want it to look like. And then you get to decide what is your part of it, right? So are you going to go to the hotel or resort or Airbnb? Are you going to, they've booked wherever they're staying, but you are going to look into a place to sublet for the day or 5 or whatever that might be. There are plenty of co-working spaces out there these days. I think that's been a positive trend I've seen since 2020. The downside of a lot of those spaces is, people think about these modern co-working spaces where ultimately there's like 3 walls of glass, and obviously that is not very, it might look nice and modern, but that doesn't mean it's very confidential. So that would be one thing to consider if you're going to look at booking a as needed space. You can also consider if there is a colleague who is willing to sublet, on an hourly basis. That's what I do with this colleague I have in Portland. I just let them know when I might need the days and times, and I pay, I think, like $15 an hour, which is super, super reasonable for office rent. So you can consider, is that what you're gonna do? Are you gonna rent a space yourself? Are you gonna go to wherever the client or clients are staying? Or do you do it virtually, right? Because you can continue to be a virtual provider working with someone in that way, even though they have traveled to the state that you are in. Depending on, your niche area, your expertise, if you do a lot of like social media marketing, if people are like, well, I just want to work with you because I see your personality and I like it and I want to work with you, they might still just want to work with you, and it's just the fact that they have to travel to a different state to do that. They may not necessarily need the in-person experience, especially if you're doing something like a 3-hour intensive in a day, or the 5 days of 3 hours each day, whatever you do, right? That's still not taking a ton of their time away from whatever other like retreat-like experience they're trying to do for themselves. So you have options there. You can continue to be virtual. The piece that I think is really helpful to consider if you are going to do any part of the renting, like you're renting an office space. Some therapists have booked the Airbnb or the hotel for the client. Obviously, you want to think about pricing when it comes to that kind of stuff, because if you're doing all the booking for them, that's more time, that's more energy, that's more effort, that's more literally money. So it's either that's something that you're building into the fee of this 3-day intensive, which includes this amount of therapy, pre-post assessment, 3-night stay at a 3-star hotel, whatever that is. There's a lot of 3s in there, and I do that intentionally. Like, if that's a part of what you're offering, obviously you want to make sure that the numbers still make sense from you, because that's part of the business expense, right? Like, you are booking spaces, and this is where the deposit policy I've talked about before can come into play too, because obviously what you don't want is you spend, let's say on the low end, $500 for 3 nights at a hotel, and then these clients back out last minute. Obviously emergencies or illness come up, but if they just kind of say like, actually, no, never mind, we decided we don't want that, now you're out at least $500, including if there's any cancellation fees with the hotel or whatever it is that you book. So you want to consider having that as a part of your deposit policy in order to really secure this spot, in order to secure booking of the provided accommodations. This is where I need 25, 50%, whatever it is that you set of the intensive fee so that I can get all of this ready to go, because you don't want to have resentment because you're losing money and stuff like that, whether that's you booking that or even booking the office space. Because even if I booked an office space for my couples intensive in Portland, like $15 an hour is not a lot, but it's 9 hours, so that ends up being around like $150. Like, it would still suck to be out $150 if a couple backed out last minute. So especially if you're doing more than that, right? Like, that kind of stuff adds up. So consider putting that into your fees if that's something that you're going to provide. You can also provide options of either saying, like, here is the all-inclusive package where this is the amount of therapy you get, these are the accommodations I'll book at, et cetera, here's that price. Or book your own accommodations and here's the price basically just for the therapy. So you can have it like that. And then the other thing to consider is if you are the one doing the traveling, let's say, like, California is a huge state. Let's say you're on the north side and someone's on the very south side of the state. And if they want you to come to them, do you want to charge a travel fee associated with that? Whether that is, again, California north to south, that's a whole flight. Or if you're driving or taking the train or whatever that is, do you want to charge an additional travel fee on top of the therapy fee? Because again, that is also your time. That's also either miles or flights or whatever that might be. And that's something to be considered of, again, not only in that booking deposit policy of, you want to be able to make sure if you're booking flights, you don't have to cancel flights and then pay for them. Booking non-refundable flights has that extra fee on top of it. So unless you have like a credit card with miles or status or something like that, then maybe it's not. But still, you want to make sure if that is something that you're going to offer, that you're okay with the additional costs that come with that. Like, when I do go from Seattle to Portland, I have driven, I've taken the train, and I've actually flown. And each one has their different price points, and each one has their different pain points around traffic time or airport time or the cost of charging up my electric vehicle. So they all have additional costs to them. I personally haven't yet decided to implement a travel fee, but for sure it can be something, it's going to be something I consider in the future, as I do have a lot of people who still ask to work with me in Oregon and they do want to do in person. And I'm still happy to do in person, but obviously, again, it has to be something I consider around, well, I'm either flying, taking the train, or driving, and then I'm booking a hotel for at least 2 nights. And for me, with my price point for my intensives, that still felt okay. But I think as other prices rise, as we know, prices of everything are kind of rising these days, the more that rises and the more that eats into, how much is this worth it from the financial side, like, that's going to be something that I consider down the road. I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, but we will see how the economy continues to unfold. So lots of things to consider there. Obviously, if you implement a travel fee, you would want to kind of have almost like a set amount to that. It would probably be something to include in your good faith estimate, just in case. And you would want to have some kind of backup plan ultimately. So let's say, you were planning to fly, but your flight got canceled, right? Is that now something the client has to pay additional if they still want to do it? Do you refund them if they say, let's just do it virtually? So there's lots of different points of consideration that you want to think about and have a plan for, because the more you plan for things, the easier it's going to be if and when, life happens and something goes wrong. But really and truly, the more that therapy intensives are becoming known, the more that clients know this is the type of option of how they can work on their relationship, their self-esteem, their OCD, their anxiety, their trauma, whatever it is. The more people know this is a thing that's going to exist, the more it is going to empower people to do things the way they want to do it. And that's both why I offer intensives to begin with, and that's why I really like this idea of people who want to travel for these therapy intensives, right? Like, I just saw, the algorithm knows me very well. I just saw some article, I think this was in either Australia or New Zealand, I think it was Australia, where there's some resort that is charging like 40 grand a week for like intensive family therapy where you get your own like personal therapist, and they're like booking these things out. And right, like I'm not trying to charge $40,000 for a week, but it's to this point of people see this benefit of intensive therapy and traveling for it too, right? Like if I'm going to have this reset, both like physically, my location is a little bit different. I'm traveling maybe with people who are important to me, if it's family or a friend trip or a partner, whoever it is. People appreciate the aspect of having some therapeutic support in that, right? Because so much of what a vacation is for people is I need a pause, I need a break, I need to get away. And that doesn't necessarily mean avoiding all of life's problems. For some people, that means, and if I can come back from this trip and be better, then like that will have been worth it, right? Like vacations are not just about physical resets in terms of new scenery and a different place to sleep and new things to enjoy. They're also the opportunity for mental resets. And what a great way to have a mental reset than by doing intensive therapy. And so there are definitely going to be more people who are interested in doing these kind of intensive therapy experiences. There are going to be people who are looking to work with someone in that area if they're going to travel. I mean, that's literally the only way that these people could have found me. If these people in Michigan and Illinois, where I do not do any marketing, I don't target it with my search engine optimization tactics, literally the only way they would have found me is they read a different blog post that I posted about, or they have started to hear about, these are two couples, so emotionally focused therapy couples intensives. And then they just started looking at like, well, where is this located? Like if I pulled up Google right now, I won't because I'm horrible at multitasking, but if I pulled it up and I looked at EFT couples intensives near me, I'm probably going to see the first few pages of Google that say like a different provider in different states. And so people can be looking at that and saying like, hey, where do you want to travel? Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to, oh, this one's in Costa Rica. You want to go to Costa Rica? This one's in Washington. Do you want to go to Seattle? We like Seattle. So there's lots of different ways that people are going to be looking for creative ways to get their needs met on their time. And that definitely includes therapy. So for sure, again, coming back to the legal things that you want to be thinking about, you want to make sure you know your state laws, right? So where does a person have to, where do you have to be in order to be able to work with a client, and where does a client have to be in order to work with you? I don't know if there are any state laws or board regulations around like you can only see them if they're a resident of the state compared to in the state, because I always think about college students, right? Like college students have to be able to see someone in the state that they're attending college, even if they're not a resident of that state. So very similarly, if someone's traveling to you, for the most part, as far as I'm aware, check your stuff out. Don't take my word just purely for it. As far as I'm aware, as long as they come to you, you are all good to go. The other thing that you'll have to consider, this is basically what you do anyway. It's not anything unique, but different clients, depending on their experience with therapy, how much therapy they've gone to, what they're familiar with in terms of like confidentiality and reporting laws, that will just want to be something that you take into consideration, is really thinking about that aspect of making sure they've really read your informed consent forms, making sure they know, like for example, I know Washington and Oregon have slightly different reporting laws around harm to self and potential harm to others, as well as, adult dependent elder abuse. And so for me, like I have to make sure if people are crossing state lines and if they've been to therapy before, I'm saying like, now I know in Washington it looks like this, but actually in Oregon it looks like this, or vice versa. And so not to say that means you have to know everyone's reporting laws or confidentiality or things like that, but it's helpful to at least make that statement of, because you are here in X state, I wanted to just make sure that I very explicitly went over these pieces around confidentiality and working together so that you know that. So as long as you have all of your legal pieces, all those, ducks in a row, as long as you have a sense of what is this going to look like if someone does come to work with me, if it's still going to be virtual, even though they travel to the state, am I going to rent an office? Am I going to go to their Airbnb? Am I going to book that hotel for them? As long as you have an idea of those policies in place, this is absolutely something that you can do, and it can be a really exciting part of your business. I just moved. I was living in Eugene, Oregon, kind of like the middle of the state, for the past 4 or 5 years. Time is weird since 2020. I was living there for a while, and then me and my partner just moved up to Seattle in February, but I still had a lot of intensives, in-person intensives that were booked in Oregon, and I made the decision to, keep going back. I could have asked them, I could have let them know, I can't do it anymore, or you will need to come up to Seattle, but I kind of liked the idea of being a therapist that travels for work. Like, it's a fun way to travel. It's a fun way to kind of still get the best of both worlds. Like, if someone does book an in-person in Eugene, I get to still go and get my favorite Mexican food. I get to go see some of my friends that are there. Like, it's a nice way to just combine business and pleasure in some ways. And so, again, as long as you think about what you want that to look like, what's going to work for you, what's going to feel good for you, how are you going to include anything additional that you offer, like travel or booking or any kind of basically like concierge services? Is that something you want to include in the pricing of your intensives? Do you want to make that like a mandatory, like that's the only option you offer? Or do you want to say, here's this full package, or here's this package with just the therapy component, and then you can figure out all booking yourself? I've done that before too. That's really the only option I do. I don't book things for people, but there was a co-working place I used to rent at in Eugene that had discount codes you could provide to people, because it was an office next to 2 different hotels. So they were like, feel free to share this booking code with people that you might work with. And so that was a nice thing to be able to provide people with, like, hey, if you book with this code, you can save 10% off at these hotels. Just make sure people know that's not like affiliate marketing, because that's very different. There's a difference between businesses working together and like you getting money for someone booking at a place that you're recommending, because that's just helpful for us to do in terms of our boundaries as therapists, is to make clear like what's a recommendation that's helpful versus I get money back if you do this from this link or something like that. So that's really all I have to say for today. I've just been getting a lot of questions of people asking about, what if people come to travel to me? What do I do if I'm a virtual therapist and people want to travel? What if I want to travel? So again, start by looking at your board and state laws around who you can work with, where you can work with them, and then really think about what is it you want to offer, anything you want to include in your pricing for that, and then kind of just have fun with it, right? And think about what it is you like to do and what it is you want to do long term. Like, I will say, as fun as it was for me in those first 2 months after moving to Seattle, as fun as it was to go back to Eugene, I think I went back like 3 times in 2 months. It started to also be a lot. I was like, okay, I don't want to do this forever. So now I started only booking in Portland, which is 2 hours closer instead of where Eugene was. So some of my clients now also travel to meet me halfway, which is great. So you're allowed to change your mind in this decision. You're allowed to do obviously what works for you, but know that this is an option, and it's a unique option. There's not a lot of people who will travel for their hour-long appointments, but there are definitely people who are looking to have retreat-like experiences that have a therapeutic healing element, whether that's themselves, whether that's a relationship with family, partner, whoever that might be. So those of you who are here live, again, I'm glad I pulled my phone up because my computer's not showing me anyone's here live, but my phone says there are people live. If you're here live, if you have questions, feel free to drop that in the chat, and I will make sure that I have my phone up and I can see if comments are coming through. If you're watching the recording of this, also feel free to drop any questions, and I'm happy to answer those as I see them come through. But yes, as a reminder, Meta recently changed their rules, and so the recordings are only available for 30 days after they get posted, and then they get deleted. me and my administrative support team are taking these recordings and also putting them up on my YouTube channel. So that'll also be a way if you have every intention of watching this video in the next 30 days and then life and it gets in the way, know that it's going to be there too. So you can ask questions there as well if you are watching this video in like 60 days on YouTube. So any questions, feel free to reach out, let me know. Either on this video, you all also have access to direct message me. I believe most of you, once you come into this group, you get on my email list, so you can also email if you have any questions as well. But thank you so much for being here, taking time today. I hope that this has given you some creativity, some inspiration of just like what this world can be. Like, part of what I really love about therapy intensives is that they have helped me to be so much more creative in my business. Like, I never thought that I would travel for intensive therapy experiences. I never thought that people would travel to me for these kind of experiences. And I'm not an expert in my field. I haven't like written books. I haven't, done professional presentations. I just was easy to find on Google, and that, goes really far these days. Even, I know a lot of people have asked these questions around like ChatGPT and AI and Google. Those things are still always going to pull from Google, right? Like, AI can't find something that Google can't find. So SEO optimization is still alive and well as a technique for marketing your practice effectively, and maybe even marketing your therapy intensives. So that's all that I have today. I will do another live probably in a couple of weeks. I'm going to put a poll out to see what's helpful, what's on everyone's mind, what do you most want to learn about, and then I will just see what questions come up as they do. And I'm going to Scotland next week for, some of you all might be in Patrick Cassal's and Jennifer Agee's world, so they're doing a Scotland summit, so I will be traveling next week. And then I'm coming back to do some therapy intensives. So I'm very excited about what therapy intensives have done for my practice and my life. And wish you all the best as well as we're going through complicated times if you are in the United States. Hopefully some of you all got to enjoy a long weekend, even if it wasn't a celebratory weekend, given what the whole thing is supposed to celebrate. But again, thank you for being here. I will see you all next time. I hope that this was helpful for you. Bye-bye.